I am so excited today to be joined by author Alex Grass. You're going to love to meet him. He's here to talk about A Boy's Hammer. And our author writes, 20 years ago, Alan and his mother disappeared in a plane crash off the coast of Helsinki. 20 years later, a giant man with his whole body covered in tattoos appeared amidst the rubble of an explosion at a Philadelphia oil refinery. He says that Alan's coming back from the dead. Alan's genius billionaire aunt Mimi agrees. And the first thing the reappeared giant has to do, return to Helsinki, Finland. All the while, strange things are underway in Philly. A resurrected serial killer, hidden occult conspiracies, bizarre murders that defy the laws of space and time. Aunt Mimi, in a miraculous trance state that grants her unseen visions of prophecy and telekinetic powers. The only person capable of unraveling this mystery, Detective Jefferson O'Brady, a dissolute alcoholic with a photographic memory and absolutely no friends on the force. Something's going down in the city of brotherly love. Please welcome author Alex Grass. How are you, Alex?
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be
so
here.
Excited. Oh my God. The description enough. I want to, get on a plane to Helsinki and check out, and I like Philly, so hey.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a bunch of different places, but most of my life was spent in and around Philadelphia. And actually, by the end of this book, it's a very long book. It's like urban fantasy, and we pared it down, but it's about 120,000, between 120 and 130,000 words. And by the end of it, we were all making jokes about how if we ever saw anyone from Finland, we would punch them in the face.
Have you been to Finland? Is that
I've never been. I would love to go. That's part of
Wait a minute, can't you write off that trip as a business expense?
I had it in mind even. I was plotting it out, believe me, I was plotting it out. I think a lot of people had a lot of trips plotted out, and then
I know. Yeah. But yeah, you're researching how to go to Helsinki. I mean, I get that.
Yeah, exactly.
I get that.
I wonder if there's like a horror novelist who specializes in settings like St. Croix and St. Lucia and St. Martin's and St. Thomas,
I think I want to, Joe. Now maybe you and I can co-write those books together.
So yeah, exactly. We co-write the books, and then the publisher will be all upset. It's like, listen, there's nothing much going on in these books. Actually, what you sent back wasn't a manuscript. It's just a bunch of receipts for pina coladas and 4-star hotels. It's coming together. It's all right. It's coming together.
Getting there. So what on earth inspired A Boy's Hammer? I mean, a nightmare, a drug trip? It wasn't a trip to Helsinki, so now I'm curious.
No drug trips for me for a long time. Nightmares oftentimes, but not with this book. It's weird that you say that. Like no one ever asked me that, but nightmares all the time. But the book came because I was starting to read national mythologies that I wasn't familiar with. There's all kinds of stuff that you get exposure to, whether or not you've read it in school. It's hard not to get some exposure to Greek mythology, just because it shows up not only in the curricula of schools, but also because you have movies like Clash of the Titans, and then it's remade, so you have 2 generations of Clash of the Titans, and then you have even if it's not directly mythological, there is sort of an obsession with Rome. You have the great movies like Gladiator, and then especially nowadays there's so much media and so much content that you have basically anything that's pre-antiquity on Netflix or streaming touches on Rome in some way, because Rome ruled the world, Sure. Right. But there's a lot of other interesting stuff out there too, And so I actually stumbled on upon a picture, and it's this picture by this artist named Galen Axeli Kalela. And it's just, it looked like it was out of its time. Like it didn't make sense to me that it had been written, that it had been done in the late 1800s, you know?
Huh?
There's just something about the technique that was unusual. I mean, like if you ever see, I think a lot of people know because there's a movie about it, and just because you see it everywhere, like Gustav Klimt, like the Golden Lady or the Woman in Gold. Yeah, it's like that. It's like it's strangely done, not super conservative. You just can't imagine it being done in an era where you know, the world as compared to the way we live now was like a lot more buttoned up.
Mm.
And it's not only that, it's that the imagery, it's something that you don't see as the subject of popularly consumed art these days. There's this witch who's attacking, but she's like, I don't know what to say other than like virile. She's like muscular and strong, and you know, so like a lot of the times when you have a witch, you have a witch it's sort of presented as being like decrepit and
Right, pointy hat.
right, yeah, exactly, you know. um
But
and then
very,
there's yeah
very.
it I don't know. And then I read the mythology that, you know, underlay the whole, a lot of this guy's body of work. And it was like really wild stuff, really it paralleled like a lot of the Norse stories. You know, you have like in my book, it's riffing on mythology of Ukan Vasara, which is like the equivalent of Mjolnir, which now everybody knows about because of the Thor movies, which is great, you know?
So they copied you, basically. That's where
Somebody copied somebody. Somebody copied
I
somebody.
love that you're grabbing this from mythology. You know, that's just so cool. I love mythology, and I know it's one of those subjects that I love and know like this much about compared to what I want to know. You know,
Yeah,
because
for sure.
I know that there's so much to know.
Yeah, well, it's the other thing is that what we have is, I believe, somewhere, I don't know, someone who actually like studies the methodologies of how you find old pre-antiquity texts could tell. But I think like we get like something between 1% and 3% of whatever existed. Everything else is just gone,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So like as
So thus you have to fictionalize it.
yeah, exactly. Well, you know, it's
Hey.
I think that, you know, for me, you know, like mythology, people always, you know, when they say mythology, they describe that's my boy in the background. Hold on. You know, there's always sort of like a pejorative to it, you know, like mythology. And people hear that and they say like, oh, it's a myth, it's fake, you know. But the thing is that mythology is a representation of all the ideas that you have or that people have about the unknown in the world, you know. And so it's not necessarily true that it's fake. It might just be tackling the things that, you know, the people at the time have no means to discover more about. So, you know, I always say that you can't be arrogant now, because in the future you're going to look foolish.
Well, that's
You know,
true.
you know, or yeah. All right, you know, it's important to have humility. And Joan Rivers said something similar. She said, like, I'm nice to everybody on the way up because I know I'm going to see them on the way down. You know?
I never heard that quote, but I really like it.
Yeah.
Really like it.
So, and if you examine the, you know, the myths, there's there is a lot of like what seems to be, you know, like collected wisdom from people who have experienced the uncanny, or maybe what they think to be the supernatural, maybe what is the supernatural. And the great thing about the Kalevala, which is the Finnish national epic, is it was actually collected by this guy. Any other day I would remember his name. It's just, this is written a couple years ago now. He, in the late 1800s, there's sort of a resurgence of like national pride, not just in Finland, but like all over the world, because there are the revolutions in 1848, and there's like the Risorgimento in Italy, and all these places are like, we want to be our own countries. So what does that mean to be our own country? And this, the guy who compiled the Kalevala, which is like basically the Finnish equivalent of the Eddas, the Norse Eddas, or the Ennead or the Odyssey or whatever. He went and he talked with like 1,000 people, right? So it really was taking the collective wisdom, the collective lore of a people, and then putting it down on paper. And there's like very, very, very few mythologies that make it, so close to our time where you can actually track where that happened.
Right.
Right. And
Boy,
that's what was amazing.
I had no idea when we logged on today that I was going to get a mythology lesson. I love that. Absolutely love that. Is that how you got started writing in the first place? I mean, I asked you about this particular book, but you have others. What started all this?
No, actually, I started writing horror because I'll talk about it. I used to talk about this so much in podcasts that I just stopped because I'm like, no one wants to hear this again.
I want to hear it. I'm sorry.
I'd love to tell you. That's great. So I'm going to say it. So almost 5 years ago, I had a very, very, very bad alcohol and drug problem. And I went down to Florida to dry out. And I went to the Betty Ford. Hazelden has a clinic in Naples, and it was great. I spent almost 3 months down there, but when I got out, I found that you spend 3 months doing nothing except for trying to figure out how to keep yourself straight and really to change the way that you respond to things, because it's not like the alcohol or drugs are an infection. It's really how a person responds to it. So they're at my core, there's something dysfunctional with me. And basically something happened where I had, some sort of shift in me. And, people in recovery call it, like a spiritual experience, but I don't know how to say it other than like, I felt like some sort of like tweak in my soul. And I tried to go back to law school, and it was just like, all of a sudden I was sitting at an accounting seminar or something. And I loved law school.
Did you? You did?
I did. I loved it. And I'm still super happy I went, and I had like great professors, and a couple of them, they're like amazing and even influenced the way I write, like Stanley Fish. He used to be like the head of the Duke, and maybe at one point the Yale English department. He taught at my in my law school. I was just like, I loved it, but when I went back, it just wasn't the same.
Right. Well, because you were different.
I was totally different. I wasn't a schmuck anymore, or I was on my way to not being a schmuck. Let's say that.
It's an evolution for all of us.
Exactly.
We're all on the way.
Yeah.
So you decided that going back to law school was not for you, and there you were on the road and saying, now what?
Yeah, exactly. And I read, I have no idea why, but I started reading Stephen King. I think probably because like back then I read a lot, and I was I guess maybe it was because I was going through all the old stuff that I read before, and there were things that I didn't like, because I was finding that as I was rewatching movies with my wife and rereading old books, I'm like, I thought I didn't like this. This is really great, and it was like, no, I was just a miserable person. And I read Dr. Sleep, which is the Stephen King book that turned into a movie about, I think, 3-4 years ago. And it just moved me because it was the story of like basically the story of Danny Torrance, who's the son of Jack Torrance. Jack Torrance is the Jack Nicholson in the original Shining. He's the guy, like coming through with the axe. Danny's the little boy, right? Who incidentally, that actor never acted again, the little kid. I mean, how could you, right?
Yeah, no, that was like enough. Done. One and done.
One and done. Yeah, yeah. And Shelley Duvall was also completely terrorized on that set. It's awful. It's awful.
I can imagine.
The movie was great though. But it's the story of Jack Torrance. I mean, Danny Torrance, who's grown up and he's become like his father. And it's sort of, it explores these themes of like being able to face the responsibility of bearing a terrible gift, which would be like the shining or the telepathy, right, or the second sight or whatever you want to call it. But also at the same time doing the hard thing, which is recognizing the things that you've done that you're responsible for, but at the same time not letting the shame of it bring you down, and then trying to find other people, or at least responding in a helpful way to people who come to you who have the same issues, because the whole idea behind Dr. Sleep is there's this girl and she's, more powerful than Danny ever was. And Danny in The Shining is, he's supposed to be the second sight phenom. Mm-hmm. And when I read it, it was like every single letter and every sentence and every word was like a thread, and it was like going through my body to my brain, and that it was wild. I had goosebumps and chills the whole time. And then I'm like, you know what, this is so fun and so great. And I think, maybe I don't have something to say in the way that Stephen King does, but I know I have something that's, that I'm very excited about. And who knows, maybe there's somebody out there who can be, as excited about my book as I was about Stephen King's book. And it turned out that there are some of those people. It's amazing.
I love that. I love that. Going into it with that, hopefully somebody out there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, we'll see what happens, And
you found your somebodies.
Yeah. And I was getting to a point where like, I was really philosophically dedicated to this, like, I can't control it. I'm just going to, the opportunity presents itself. I'm going to go along with it. Okay. And my mom could not handle it. I love my mom. She's the best person in the world, but she's like calling up my dad and, being like, go to war, get him back in law school, and now she has all my books on her shelf.
Oh, but has she read them?
I've told her not to.
I was going to say.
I've told her not to.
So she has them, but
yeah, exactly. Like my mom is like, I don't know. She would be like the kid who ratted out the other kid because she saw like bubble gum stuck under the table at school. Not quite. She's a lot nicer than my mom is the nicest person in the world, but she is a goody two shoes.
So definitely you gave them to her, but you glued the pages closed, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I like cut out the meat in the middle and I just gave her like a thin laminated double side, like a menu in a restaurant.
I love that. Just something to put on the shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
Say, my son.
Yeah, exactly. Show your friends, show your friends. Yeah.
As long as none of our friends buy the book and read it.
Exactly. Oh, I think there's no chance. No chance. Although I am shocked, like some people have bought, like I never thought, like my dad's sister, who, she's been really great to me. Her name's Elizabeth, but we like she's sort of like a CEO type who was never a CEO, if that makes sense. because she was married to a guy who was in the foreign service, and so she lived everywhere. She was in like Brazil and a million different places, and she's like a super mom. She had like 6 7 kids, and all of them. She she did it right. Like she like all her kids went out, and like she has one boy, and the boy, he's like a super genius. He went to Johns Hopkins for a PhD, and like I don't know, like artificial intelligence in Chinese language. I don't know, right?
Oh gosh.
But when I tell you that I can probably guess correctly that she's never read a horror novel in her life, I'm pretty sure I'm like hitting the odds, right? And
Yep.
she told me afterward, she's like, I couldn't believe it. It's like it's really good,
Wow.
Yeah.
That must have been like better than any review anywhere to get that.
There was only one thing that was better than that. There was only one, yeah, but that was amazing. There were, so I'll tell you the best, and then I'll tell you the reviews I really loved.
Okay.
The best was when I sent my first book to my father, and my dad was like brutally honest, like brutally honest, like one of those type of people. And he read the book, and he's like, it's really, really good.
Ooh.
I was like, I know, I got chills. I'm like, that's amazing. I didn't even feel like I had to sell any books,
I know, right. You were done. Like, that's enough.
Yeah, exactly. And I said to him, we talk all the time now. He was just here. He just left. He flew back to Tel Aviv yesterday. But we talk like every day on FaceTime, which is hugely different because like we used to both be drunks, and we used to get in like physical fights all the time. It was really bad. Like as good as mom's side was, like dad, not his side of the family, but definitely dad himself was bad. So
but he liked it. He didn't just like it, he loved it.
He loved it. And then we were walking, and it's like so embarrassing too, because like we were walking in Tel Aviv, and we went to a bookstore, right? And there I picked up a book of short stories by Raymond Carver, which my then editor had recommended. And I wasn't really big into I didn't know like the great short story writers. I guess Raymond Carver is supposed to be one of the top ones, right? And the woman at the checkout counter is like, wow, Raymond Carver, this guy's one of the best. And my dad mumbles, not better than my son. And I'm like, oh God. But it was totally like, it was one of those like preposterous parent statements that it ended up being like anodyne, and I wasn't even really that embarrassed, because it's just like, well, clearly he has no idea what he's talking about.
Very cool. It's funny how no matter how old we get, if a parent, validation means so much.
They see you from when you're nothing, right? They see you from like, it's really hard to look down your nose at someone who before you even speak has seen you poop your pants 1,000 times, You know what I mean?
And you're a dad now, so
yeah. I have 3, and that
keeps your hands full, that's for sure.
I like it a lot. I like it. I have my stepdaughter Lucia. She's 16, and she's like really well behaved, so I'm extremely fortunate. And she also likes to nerd out like on some of the things that I do. So we sit at the table like once, twice a week, and we talk for like an hour about what the new Marvel or DC, or she likes anime a lot more than I do, but we definitely have a lot of crossover.
Nice.
And then my 2 sons, they're just like, the one is 7, and he's like, I don't know, he's coming up on 5 feet and 100 pounds. He's a giant, and it makes me so happy. I can't explain it. I don't know why. It's sort of like such a primal thing, just like I have a big kid.
I love it.
And he's so nice. He's so sweet. he's like me and my wife say, my wife Gina and I, we say he was born with a kind soul, you know? Like he was in class and there was another kid that was crying and he came over and he just took his hand and he's like, it's all right. You're gonna be okay.
Oh, good. It's good parenting.
I I hope so. I hope so.
Lee.
Yeah. Although it can't 100% be that my youngest one is like, we call him Stewie Griffin because he's 3 years old and he's reading and he's writing and he's doing multiplication, but he's mean. He's mean. He's so mean. I actually come down he comes down in the morning, right? And they're totally different kids. Louis, the youngest one, comes down in the morning and he gets the iPad himself and and I'm just like, good morning, Lou. And he goes, eh, eh, like, don't interrupt me.
So he's not a morning person.
No, he's not. But this is where you can track the genetics because like me, 4:35 in the morning, I'm up.
Seriously?
Yeah, for sure. I'm up.
I didn't even necessarily go to bed yet at that hour.
I know. Well, it's like whatever works for anybody,
Exactly.
Like my mom put her time in, but I'll tell you now she's up till 2, 3 in the morning. And I'm like, great, awesome. Whatever works for you.
Exactly. Well, I have to say, I was loving when you walked from one room to another, getting to see the architectural style of that pre-war Brooklyn building there.
It's pretty neat, right?
My gosh, the glass at the top of your windows, that ironwork that was in your room dividers. I don't know if while you were walking, you could see my face going, wow.
When we found this place,
Oh.
I had an absolute Doctor Strange obsession.
Oh my gosh.
And we found it and I was, first of all, like we were almost sunk during COVID, because we had done this whole, and I'm just like this house is gonna undo us. We're gonna be unzipped.
Oh my gosh.
But I saw this place, we brought it, Gina did everything, but I said, I don't want to touch anything. I just want to I said 100-something years ago, someone poured their guts into this place and I want to keep it because dang, it looks good.
Does. Oh my God. I'm telling you, you got to see my face walking through. Look at that. Look at those.
Yeah.
Things. Look at that molding.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah.
Hey, you know what? It's so funny because I was talking to my friend Aaron. We've been friends for almost 30 years and we were all bad kids together, me, him, and my brother, and now he just started school. He's been a fireman for almost 10 years in Philadelphia. He's in school at Penn State and he has a 4.0. He's, this is one of these guys who's as soon as he gets his mind set to something, it's him versus the enemy and the enemy is the goal and he wants to crush it, And I realized we've been sitting around, we've been talking about income tax rates in various states and then property tax and how property tax was assessed. And then I was just like, man, I think our 13-year-old versions of ourselves will be really disappointed in us right now. We were so bad, And my brother Harrison, I went on a trip with him. He went up to a wedding in Toronto and I just tagged along and he found all these old videos because I forgot even before iPhones, Harrison used to video record stuff and a lot of incriminating stuff, in a criminal procedural sense, incriminating. Where he's showing us setting off fireworks on train tracks, and I'm like, oh my God, and I told Aram about it, and he's like, if I saw a kid doing that these days, I'd tan his hide. And I'm like, yeah, probably me too.
Yeah, times have changed. Times have definitely come a long way. But it makes you, as your own enter those ages, you'll get it.
Yeah. I think it's all about, your parents try and tell you, but what it's really about is humility. It's you don't know what you don't know.
Nope, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. Well, I loved the apartment tour there, the house tour.
No problem. We could do it. We could do a real estate offshoot,
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
oh absolutely. I was like definitely right there for that. And I'm a Queens girl, so I was like, look at what
Yeah.
he's doing.
Instead of between the covers, do between the drywall, you know?
Oh, I like that. Hey, maybe you and I could do a show. We'll do a thing. We'll be on HGTV or something instead of the Property
For
Brothers.
sure. Those people are some of my heroes. I'm so lame. I love those shows.
Oh, I do too. Oh my gosh. I used to love Design Star and all of them. Design on I was a total junkie of that.
Yeah.
I had
But
to wean myself away to work.
yeah. You know what though? You look like you're like 100%. I'm confident, 1,000% I'm confident that you would be a good pick for one of those shows, you know?
Oh, you're sweet.
No, I think you have it together, like you have the look.
Oh, believe me, I'll send them, some of them are real. I would so do that.
Yeah.
When Between the Drywall debuts, you have to co-host with me.
Between the drywall. And well, between the drywall with the lunk and the lady. There you go.
Oh, I'm sending them a query tomorrow.
There you go. Perfect.
You got it. But first, let me make sure that everybody who's watching knows about your book and where to find you. A Boy's Hammer and many other books by Alex Grass. Where's the best place for them to find you?
Amazon.
Yes.
Amazon.com. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can find me on Goodreads, which is, I think, a wonderful website. They don't pay me at all to say this stuff, but I think it's actually great. They have book lists and you have message words, and you can find, I have found maybe 100 books on Goodreads that I'd never heard of, and I was very happy that I did.
Fantastic. Well, I will tell Goodreads that they need to be sending you a check for that. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining me between the covers and next time between the drywall.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.